Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho. It is a brand new week and we're coming to you this Monday, the 6th day of October, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matters. Get to the stories that matter today. There's a lot going on in the Senate. First off, Senator Lacson is reportedly quitting his post as Senate Blue Ribbon Committee Chairman. Meanwhile, Senator Peter Cayetano is pushing for snap elections, a move he believes could help restore public trust in government institutions. Another major story we're following closely. According to Senator Amy Marcos, Justice Secretary Boying Remulla will be appointed as the new Ombudsman today. She criticized the move, describing it as a political strategy that threatens both accountability and constitutional principles. And the Holy Father, Pope Leo XIII, extended his spiritual closeness to the Philippines and offered prayers for all victims of the powerful earthquake in Cebu. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda. The Senate is shaken after a major development in the flood control probe. Senate President Pro Tempore Lacson is resigning as chairman of the Blue Ribbon Committee. More in this report.
Amid the ongoing hearings of the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee on alleged anomalous flood control projects, Senate President Pro Tempore Lacson is stepping down as committee chairman. This follows word he received that several colleagues in the Senate were no longer in favor of the way he was conducting the hearings. Lacson stressed that if his colleagues are no longer satisfied, it's time to resign and let him choose a replacement. He added that his continued role as Blue Ribbon Chair always depended on the trust of his fellow senators. Still, Lacson vowed he will not stop his crusade against corruption and the misuse of taxpayers' money. Senate President Tito Sotto, a known ally of Lacson, said he will first talk with him regarding the matter. This comes after Senator J.V. Ejercito earlier admitted he had considered leaving the majority bloc because of how the flood control hearings were being handled. Recall that Lacson had already suspended this week's scheduled hearing, saying the National Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice were not yet ready with their documents. He also cited the need to give way to the budget deliberations and the Commission on Appointments.
Amid mounting public frustration over corruption, Senator Peter Cayetano is calling for snap elections, a move he says could help rebuild trust in government institutions. Here's the report.
Senator Peter Cayetano has proposed holding snap elections to help restore public trust in government institutions. In a social media post, Cayetano urged all elected national officials, including the President, Vice President, Senators, and members of the Congress, to voluntarily step down to pave the way for new elections. Under his proposal, no incumbent official would be allowed to run in the next election cycle, allowing what he described as a clean slate for the Filipino people. Cayetano said the move could serve as a turning point for the country, a change for renewal and revival, if leaders are willing to sacrifice for the nation's good. Instead of calling for another people power movement, he said public servants themselves should make the sacrifice by stepping aside. He noted that a string of corruption scandals has eroded public confidence and deepened frustration among Filipinos. Cayetano emphasized that if government officials truly serve the people, they should not fear starting over. He added that true change begins with honesty and the courage to admit when it's time to step down. Cayetano also urged Filipinos to reflect and pray about this possibility. For News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
The Commission on Elections has ordered Senator Cheese Escudero to explain a 30 million peso campaign donation he allegedly received from a government contractor during the 2022 polls. Comelec Chair George Garcia said the order was issued on October 3 with a hearing set for October 13. This after an admission from Centerway's construction president Lawrence Lubiano that he contributed to Escudero's campaign. Escudero has denied any violation and said he is ready to present evidence before the poll body. Senator Risa Ontiveros denied rumors that she had insertions in the Bicameral Conference Committee's version of the 2025 national budget. Ontiveros stressed she made no BICAM insertions, had none in the unprogrammed funds, did not sign the BICAM report, and even voted no on the budget bill. She urged the public not to believe in fake news, saying all her proposed amendments went through proper Senate procedures. The BICAM process has come under fire amid supposed kickbacks involving current and former senators, allegations they have all denied. Senator Amy Marcos claimed that Justice Secretary Boying Remulla is set to be appointed as the next ombudsman today. Marcos voiced concern over the reported move, calling it a political maneuver that could undermine accountability and violate constitutional principles. She also pointed out that Remulla's possible appointment raises questions about fairness and integrity, noting that he still faces pending cases. Remulla is among those shortlisted for the position of ombudsman. Up next, we'll get more analysis on events unfolding in the Senate. We have political analyst and former presidential advisor Ronald Llamas joining us, the birthday boy, when Morning Matters returns. Stay with us. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho, and here in Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. There have been major developments rocking the Senate. Senator Ping Lacson is resigning as Blue Ribbon Committee Chair after colleagues questioned his handling of flood control hearings. Meanwhile, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano is pushing for snap elections, saying all elected officials should step down to restore public trust. Senator Risa Hontiveros is denying rumors of BICAM insertions in the 2025 budget, insisting she voted no and calling the claims fake news. And Senator Amy Marcos raises alarm over reports that Justice Secretary Boying Remulla could be appointed ombudsman, warning it may undermine accountability. Let's get some insights on what these developments mean for governance and public trust. We have on the show this morning Ronald Llamas, the birthday boy. Happy birthday sa inyo, Sir Ronald, the political pundit ng bayan and former presidential advisor. Magandang umaga sa iyo, Ronald. Parang sa birthday nyo, nakalimutan nyo rin po mag-unmute.
Ay!
Ayan. Okay na. Oo.
Good morning, Gretchen. No? Salamat sa iyong pagbati. No? Nakuha mo ba yung lechon na pinadala ko dyan?
Hindi ba, binalik mo nga? Papunta na sana dito. Oo. Hindi, how did you spend your birthday?
By myself. No? Nakatingin ko na lang. No, nagdudungkal ng lupa.
Ganun
no?
ba?
Hindi katulad ng iba na hindi masyado marunong magdungkal ng lupa, magpala.
Parang di po bagay sa inyo mag-isa. Okay, puntahan na natin itong mga developments over the weekend. Medyo madami-dami. Saan ba tayo magsisimula? Simulan na po natin na siguro na lang kay Senator Ping Lacson's decision to resign as Blue Ribbon Committee Chair. Ito ba ay dahil nagbabadya ng magkapalitan sa liderato sa Senado? How do you read this decision?
Well, may ganong klaseng pagsusuri yung iba na isa sa dahilan kung bakit bumaba si Senator Ping Lacson ay para to ease the pressure kay Senate President Tito Sotto dahil yung kanyang majority sa House ay hindi ganun kalaki. Medyo manipis. No? At may mga member ng majority na publicly nagsasabi na hindi sila masaya dun sa investigasyon sa Blue Ribbon na mas ang tinatamaan ay mga senador imbis na yung real culprits. No? Kaya yun yung isang pinanggagalingan. Pero duda ako ron dahil mukhang wala namang possibility at least today or this week na mapalitan si Senate President Tito Sotto. Kung maalala mo, Gretchen, lumabas na yung ganyang klaseng chismis more than 2 weeks ago. Pero hindi naman natuloy. No? Kaya tingin ko, mas maganda na tanungin nyo si Senator Ping Lacson. Pero from my vantage point, watching him at saka yung conduct niya sa Blue Ribbon Committee, mukhang ang pinanggagalingan niya ay exasperation sa kanyang mga kapwa-senador, sa kanilang conduct sa investigasyon. Di ba meron nga siyang binanata ng isang senador na bakit mo dinedepensahan sila, yung mga kontraktor. No? Sabi nga niya, publicly, ay kaya niya naharapin yung mga banat sa kanya sa social media, pero medyo asar na asar siya kung mga senador mismo ang babanat sa kanya. Kaya tingin ko mas ganon. Dahil as a chairman ng Blue Ribbon, kinakailangan mo ng proper decorum. Baka mas gusto ni Senator Ping Lacson as a member ay tanggalin yung decorum na yon sa investigasyon dito sa Blue Ribbon.
Hindi po ba,
Tingin ko lang, no? Pero mamaya kasi, pe-present pa yan sa plenary. Ibig sabihin, pwedeng sabihin ng plenary, hindi maganda para sa Senado, sa image ng Senado na ikaw ay mag-i-step down sa gitna ng mga investigasyon. Pwede ba mag-stay ka pa? Tingin ko, pwede nang i-reconsider yon.
Hindi ba parang warning shot yung sinabi ni Senator J.B. Ejercito na siya and 4 other majority members are thinking of leaving the majority? Do you think that was a reaction to this? To that statement, rather?
Yeah. Yes and no. No? Yes, medyo uncomfortable sila doon sa nangyayaring investigasyon. Pero no, dahil ang tingin nila, si Senate President Tito Sotto ay nagbibigay ng certain stability sa Senado na na-weaken under the leadership of Senate President Chis Escudero, na ngayon ay iniimbestigahan sa maraming mga kaso, from the violation of the Omnibus Election Code hanggang dito sa mga insertions. Nabanggit nga siya ni Undersecretary Bernardo na tumanggap din ng kickbacks mula sa DPWH. So, under the leadership of Tito Sotto, whether you like him or not, nagbibigay siya ng certain stability at this point, na very volatile yung ating political landscape at napakalawak ng disenchantment sa ating mga politiko. Kaya tingin ko itong mga members ng majority nare-realize din yon. At hindi acceptable sa kanila yung lumalabas na mga pangalan na alternative kay Tito Sotto. No?
But don't you think that he's working with a gun to his head, walking on eggshells? Kasi parang, yun nga, dahil ang nipis nung diferensya ng majority at minority, ay anytime, kapag hindi nagustuhan yung galawan, pwede rin kumbaga parang mag-statement ng ganito, katulad ng sinabi ni Senator JV. Hindi ba parang yan ang magiging tema ng kanyang leadership?
Yes, very delicate yung balancing act nila sa Senado. Pero wag mo kalimutan, Gretchen, mahigit 2 dekada na rin si Tito Sotto na senador. Di ba? Kaya medyo hindi naman bago sa kanya yung ganyang klaseng balancing act. At I'm sure, tinutulungan siya nung kanyang kaibigan, si Senator Ping Lacson, dito sa ganitong klaseng balancing act. Kaya, yes, very delicate yung kanyang pamumuno at this point. Pero at the same time, ay meron naman siyang wherewithal, meron siyang track record, meron siyang political instincts para sa ganyang klaseng
He knows how to navigate. Oh, okay. Oo. Pero isa sa mga bringing up nga ni Senator Ping Lacson na naging controversial, itong mga numero on insertions. Na almost all senators had 100 billion worth of insertions with 5 to 9 billion for each lawmaker, to which Senate President Tito Sotto was the first to clarify na normal yung mga insertions na yan, na it's part of the budget process. At tingin niyo po ba, hindi naman siguro nagkalumot itong dalawa?
Yes, tingin ko ay disruptor kasi si Senator Ping Lacson. Dinisrupt niya yung normal process sa Senado by saying na, almost all na mga senador ay gumagawa nito. Pero kinlarify naman ni Senator Sotto na dahil power of the purse, talaga namang yung NEP, yung National Expenditure Program ng gobyerno, ng executive, ay talagang yan ay pwedeng baguhin ng Kongreso at saka Senado. Mukhang yung controversy ay dun sa small committee. Kung natapos na yung proseso, dun na magpapasok na napakaraming insertions during the BICAM at hindi transparent. So, hinihiwalay nila yung normal insertions or amendments na very public, no, na role ng Kongreso at saka Senado as may hawak ng power of the purse, at yung mga sikreto na mga insertions sa tinatawag nilang small committee or BICAM. No? At doon nadidikit at this point si Saldico at saka si Senator Chis Escudero doon sa ganung klaseng insertions. So may ganung klaseng nuancing si Tito Sotto at saka si Senator Ping Lacson. Hindi ako magugulat na merong good cop, bad cop silang tandem.
Well, which leads me to my next question. Itong naisiwalat din over the weekend sa isang radio program na insertions ng isang senador, pangalanan na natin siya, Senator Risa Hontiveros, sabi sa programa na yon na nagkaroon daw ng 3 billion worth of alleged insertions in the budget with 750 million for flood control. Pero nirespondehan nito ni Senator Risa at sabi niya, wala akong BICAM insertions, wala sa unprogrammed funds, hindi ako pumimima sa BICAM, bumoto ng no sa kontrobersyal na 2025 budget. Do you think that exonerates her completely from, from the responsibility of having flood control funds under her?
Tingin ko ay magpapatuloy yung ganyan mga atake sa kanya. Dahil marami siyang na-create na kalaban dito sa kanyang term as senator. Halimbawa, yung followers ni Kibuloy, yung followers ni Digong, yung followers ni Sara, yung followers ni Alice Go, etc. Kaya magpapatuloy yan. Hindi siya lulubayan nung mga nagalit sa kanya. Kung alala mo, Gretchen, ang inuna nila si Senator Ping Lacson. 'Di ba? Yung nilabas nilang picture with Diskaya.
Diskayas, yes.
Oo, 'di ba? Kahit naman ikaw, hindi mo kilala yung mga Diskaya 3 months ago, pag may nagpa-picture sa'yo na Diskaya, ay itatangkilikin mo. Hindi mo naman sila kilala. No? So, hindi yun necessarily na meron siyang malalim at na relasyon sa mga Diskaya. Pero ginamit yun against him. Ngayon naman, ito naman si Risa naman ang isinunod. Tingin ko ay hindi ko na sasagutin yan dahil si Senator Risa na yung sumagot sa ganyang klaseng mga atake sa kanya, no? Pero tingin ko magpapatuloy yan, lalo na ay tag team sila ni Senator Ping Lacson dito sa Blue Ribbon Committee. Talagang sila yung magiging target ng marami na tatamaan sa kanilang mga investigasyon.
Kasi gano'n ang uso ngayon, no? Yung maglalabas ka ng litrato with someone and then immediately may parang pwede nang maipahiwatig doon. Pero sa kanya kasi, no, kahit na she voted no, na ipasa itong budget na ito, so kahit paano meron pa rin napunta sa kanya. Kasi meron na rin mga kumakalat na litrato naman of her projects na unfinished online.
Nakita ko rin yun, pero mukhang sumagot na dyan yung mismong lugar na allegedly ay ghost project. No? Nasagot na niya na maayos yan, na hindi yan totoo. No? Kaya iiwan ko na lang sa kanya yung pagdepensa sa kanyang sarili. Mukhang very capable naman siya na ipaliwanag yan. More than me.
So, hindi tayo magkakaroon ng coup today? Kasi yun ang isa sa mga inaabangan. Kasi nga, mayroong ding kumakalat na si Senator Alan Peter Cayetano wants that Senate presidency.
Mukhang wala. At mukhang dahil na-realize naman ni Senator Alan Peter Cayetano na wala siyang tsansa na maging Senate President ngayon or soon.
Wala ba talaga? Wala ba talaga? Hindi ba kasi manipis nga ito ay pwedeng pumunta sa kanya naman ang ihip ng hangin?
Tingin ko today wala. No? Hindi natin alam sa mga darating na araw. Pero today tingin ko ay wala. Kaya finload niya yung proposal na snap election. Na resign all dahil dismayado na daw ang mga tao sa mga politiko. Tingin ko maganda yan kung uunahin niya yung kanyang sarili na mag-resign. As an example. No? As an example. Dahil hindi kasi hindi pwedeng pwersahin yung mga politiko na mag-resign Voluntary yan Kaya maganda na simulan niya. Na siya yung mag-resign at maging halimbawa sa ibang politiko na mag-resign din. No?
Ay, na yun nga ang sinabi ni ng kanyang kapatid na si Lino Cayetano. Simulan mo at simulan natin buong Cayetano family. Walang tatakbo sa 2028. Mukhang tingin ko ay mahihirapan. Pero on the other side of it, no, what is your personal assessment of the way Senator Ping Lacson conducted the Blue Ribbon Committee hearings? Ano ang iyong fair assessment on that? At pangalawa, pagkatapos ng resignation na yun, saan na tayo pupunta? Sino na ang papalit sa kanya? At may dahilan pa bang tayong tumuon o mag-antay para sa resulta ng Blue Ribbon Committee?
Tingin ko dahil sa leadership ni Senator Ping Lacson sa Blue Ribbon, medyo nabawasan yung disenchantment ng mga tao sa Senado. No? At wala siyang sinasamba. Whether yan ay kongresista, whether yan ay senador, ay tinutumbok na talaga kung saan dadalhin ng ebidensya yung investigasyon sa corruption. Kaya so far, maganda yung kanyang pamumuno. No? Kaya sana i-reconsider niya yung kanyang plano na mag-step down as head ng Blue Ribbon Committee. Dahil imaginein mo yung itsura ng Senado kung sa kalagitnaan ng investigasyon na kasama mismo yung mga senador, ay biglang step down yung head ng Blue Ribbon. Medyo hindi maganda yung magiging optics. Lalo na sa ngayon na yung ICI ay medyo jogging in place. Medyo hindi dramatic at very compelling yung ginagawa nilang investigasyon. So sa ngayon, yung Blue Ribbon ang nagiging sentro nitong investigasyon sa corruption, lalong-lalo na sa lumalawak na pagkadismaya ng tao sa kanilang mga politiko. Kaya tingin ko ay masyadong magiging negatibo para sa Senado kung itutuloy ni Senator Ping Lacson yung kanyang pagbaba. Sana ma-reconsider niya yan mamaya sa plenary. Pero yan ay kanyang personal decision.
It seems that over the weekend, meron din po naging announcement na itutuloy yung Blue Ribbon Committee hearings. Yun nga lang, executive session na. Hindi na yung open to the public. What do you make of that direction? Parang hindi ba parang mapupunta rin tayo sa baka maging baka pagtakpan lamang at maging selective justice ang resulta. In the same way that people feel about the ICI.
Correct. Very correct yung sinabi mo, Gretchen. Ang beauty ng Blue Ribbon ay dahil siya ay open at saka transparent. Tapos itatago mo, medyo mawawala yung esensya ng Blue Ribbon investigation. Lalong-lalo na, inuulit ko, na yung ICI ay hindi transparent yung investigasyon. Hindi sila sa publiko. Na tingin ko, dapat gawin nila. Pwede namang magkaroon ng executive session. Pero hindi siya yung magiging norm. Siya yung magiging exception to the rule. Hindi naman bawal yun Kaya ang suggestion ko, kung sila ay makikinig, naduda ako kung makikinig sila, ay yung ICI ay gawing very public at very transparent yung investigasyon. At huwag gawing sikreto yung kasalukuyang Blue Ribbon investigation na sana ay patuloy na pamunuan ni Senator Ping Lacson.
So yun ang aasahan nyo ngayong araw na ito? Na tanggihan yung kanyang resignation.
I-present pa yan sa plenary mamaya.
At maging public pa rito. But syempre, alam po natin na malaki ang political pressure on this committee. Ano po ang sa palagay po ninyo? It seems that the hearings are wrapping up. Wala na sa Kongreso, dito sa Senado, may attempt to make it to turn it into an executive session. Nag-die down na ba yung public anger? Of course, yun ang inaasahan ng ilan sa mga politikong ayaw madawit dito.
Kung gagawin nila yan, parang binuhusan nila ng gasolina yung public anger. Hindi huhupa ang public anger. Kung makita mo, Gretchen, itong nakaraang mga araw, mga eskwelahan sa Bulacan, sa Bicol, sa Cebu, sa Cagayan de Oro, ay naglalabasan. Nagwo-walk out yung mga estudyante. At ang dala-dala nilang issue, itong corruption na ito. Hindi ito huhupa. At kung gagawin nila yan, na ititigil nila yung investigasyon sa Blue Ribbon at panatiliin nilang sekreto yung investigasyon sa ICI, ay tingin ko yan yung magiging bitamina para sa greater outrage ng mga tao. Na hindi yan mawawala. Sigurado ko yan, 100%.
Okay. On the other end, there's another piece of news. Senator Amy Marcos broke last night. It is the impending appointment of Boying Remulla as Ombudsman. What do you make of that? Ang sabi pa niya dito sa kanyang announcement ay tunay ngang kulay itim pa rin ang kulay ng bayan. Nagluluksa, nababalutan ng pangamba at kawalan ng pag-asa. Sapagkat ang huling bantayog ng pananagutan ay pinilit wasakin ng politika at kalapastangan sa konstitusyon.
Well, ang masasabi ko na lang dyan ay eksperto si Senator Amy sa kanyang mga sinabi. No? Pero ang tingin ko, very crucial yung usapin ng ombudsman, lalo na hindi natuloy yung impeachment. Pwede kasing buksan ng ombudsman yung mga ebidensya na hindi natin nakita dun sa impeachment ni Vice President Sara. Halimbawa, yung mga bank accounts niya, pwedeng pabuksan niya ng ombudsman in relation dun sa isang SALN investigation. No? Pwede yang buksan. Pwede niyang sabihan ng AMLA na buksan yung mga bank accounts na yan. Kaya very frantic yung mga kaalyado ni Vice President Sara, katulad ni Amy Marcos at saka ni Pulong Duterte, na mapigilan yung appointment ni Boying Remulla as ombudsman. Dahil halos sigurado nila, yan yung iimbestigahan ni Boying Remulla. Pero duda ako na siya i-appoint today. Baka within the week. Pero baka hindi today. No? Pero gayon pa man, ay talagang very frantic sila, very anxious sila dyan sa possible appointment ni Boying Remulla as ombudsman, na for now, tingin ko ay parang wala nang sagabal. Wala na yung mga kaso na sinampa sa kanya ng mga Duterte para siya ay hindi maging ombudsman.
Oh, which leads me to my question. What do you think happened there in the middle? Yun nga po, the last we heard ay meron pang balakid, no, dito sa kanyang kandidatura dahil mismong yung pagpapadala kay dating presidente sa Hague, ayan yung naging subject ng kaso na yun. Wouldn't he be one of the least credible to take the position of ombudsman? At paano kaya nawala yung mga issue na yun?
Well, ang alam ko, yung acting ombudsman ay niresolve yung mga kaso na yon. No? Na tingin ko ay medyo hindi naman talaga fair. No? Na kakasuhan siya dahil dun sa pagpapadala niya o pagtulong niya sa International Criminal Court na kunin si ex-President Digong. No? Dahil usapin din niya ng international law eh. Kahit hindi tayo miyembro ng ICC, ay meron tayong latent obligation. Dahil nangyari ang mga kaso na yan, nung 1 year na tayo ay obligado pa na sumunod sa ICC. Kahit later on, ay formally na wala na tayo. Kaya tingin ko ay hindi naman niya totally kasalanan yung ganong klase. If ever, kasalanan talaga yon. No? Yung pagpapadala kay ex-President Digong sa ICC. Kaya mabuti naman na nawala na yung kaso na yon at wala nang sagabal sa kanyang pagiging ombudsman. Whether siya ay magiging credible na ombudsman, tingin ko ay yan ay nakadepende doon sa kanyang gagawin as ombudsman.
Pero malaki rin ang magiging papel ba ng kanyang opisina dito sa sa flood control probe?
Yes, dahil halimbawa, kung merong politiko na may ebidensya na more than 50 million yung kanyang kinuling ba, ay pwede siyang kasuhan ng ombudsman at makukulong siya immediately. Dahil non-bailable yung kaso na plunder.
Pero isn't it more of administrative?
Kay Jinggoy Estrada at saka kay Bong Revilla. Kung maalala mo, Gretchen, nakulong sila. Di ba?
Oo. Sa tingin po ninyo, hindi na natin mapapakinggan ang dating House Speaker na si Martin Romualdez, to defend himself. Kasi the last we heard about that, siya inimbitahan itong Blue Ribbon Committee hearing, pati na rin si Zaldico. Tingin nyo, hindi na tayo magkakaroon ng tsansang marinig sila?
Hindi ko alam, no? Hindi ko alam. Pero tingin ko ay mapipilitan siyang sumagot sooner or later dito sa mga binabato sa kanya ng mga kaso, no? Duda ako kung at this point babalik si Zaldico sa Pilipinas. Pero tingin ko si Speaker, dahil sa interparliamentary courtesy, ay pwedeng hindi dumalo dun sa Senate hearing. Ganon din ang ginagawa ng mga senador pag pinapatawag sila sa House hearing, di ba? Nag-invoke sila ng interparliamentary courtesy. Kaya pwedeng gawin yon ni Speaker. Bagamat hindi makakaganda sa kanyang imahen kung hindi ko dadalo. No? Pero tungkol sa tanong mo, tingin ko ay sooner or later ay kailangan niyang sumagot. Hindi yan pwedeng maiwan in limbo. yung mga batiko sa kanya.
Okay, so I guess we are at the critical juncture in this investigation. Lahat ng tao nakatuon sa magiging desisyon.
Very critical.
How big of a day is today, apart from being the day after your birthday, for everybody watching?
Well, maganda na yung trillion peso march ay finormalize na hindi na lang sila marcha. Sila ay trillion peso movement. At marami silang pinaplanong pagkilos na magko-culminate sa November 30 sa isang mas malaki na mobilisasyon against corruption. Perhaps similar or greater than yung million people march during against Napoles, against pork barrel, more than 10 years ago. Kaya maganda itong nangyayari ngayon at maganda na nag-level up yung simbahan tungkol sa kanilang moral leadership at moral term of reference dito sa lumalawak na skandalo na ito.
Pati ang simbahan may lumabas din ng litrato with Cardinal Tagle officiating the renewal of vows of Zaldico. So it seems that even the church is under attack. Or
Kaya Gretchen, ingat ka sa mga pictures baka kung sino yung magpa-picture sa iyo.
Hindi ako mapapapicture sa iyo. Okay, maraming salamat sa iyo. Thank you for helping us understand what to watch out for on this Monday. Mukhang marami tayong abangan for the rest of the day. In the meantime, sayang di ka pumunta rito. May pakape pa naman ako para sa iyo. Mamaya malamig na pagdating mo dito.
Sana nakatulong kahit konti. Kahit konti lang. Kahit konti lang. Sana nakatulong.
Alright, we got political analyst and former presidential advisor joining us, Ronald Llamas, in the house. Happy birthday again. Up next, Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste wants the DPWH to scrap or re-evaluate the cost of 1.6 trillion pesos worth of infrastructure projects. All that and more when Morning Matters returns. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here in One News. Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste has called on the Department of Public Works and Highways to cancel or reprice 1.6 trillion pesos worth of infrastructure projects. Leviste made the proposal as Congress wrapped up deliberations on the 2026 national budget, citing alleged irregularities in several projects, including a terminated 95.99 million peso flood control contract in Lemery, Batangas. He said the DPWH could invoke contract clauses allowing termination or adjustment of overpriced or impractical projects, as well as those tainted by corruption. Leviste urged the DPWH to review its pricing system, saying a 25% cost reduction could yield 400 billion pesos in savings. And to talk more about this, we are joined this morning by Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste. Good morning, Congressman. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning.
Could you walk us through your proposal for the DPWH to be able to reprice or cancel some parts of the 1.6 trillion peso worth of projects? How did you arrive at 400 billion pesos in potential savings?
That's 25%, which is approximately what in the Senate hearings came out to be the kickbacks that were given from these projects. And the DPWH sets the prices in the budget. And this week, we're actually approving the 2026 DPWH budget of 625 billion pesos. And there is 1 trillion plus in the 2025 budget. So the total of 1.6 trillion of total contracts in the General Appropriations Act of 25 and 26, 25% of which is 400 billion.
But we're heading to the last quarter of 2025. Do you still think that it's possible to get a hold of the 25% to get it back?
That's a very good question, and part of what I think the public doesn't know, that the 2025 projects are at approximately 30% completion as of today. Because there's a period until the end of the succeeding year, or December 2026, to complete the 2025 projects. Many of them were actually just bid out and awarded in the second quarter of this year. Many of them also have not made substantial progress pending inquiries on DPWH and haven't received advance or down payments on their work. In the case of the Lemery Batangas terminated flood control project of 95.99 million pesos, the contractor agreed not to get paid at all, just not to be scrutinized for appeared to be both substandardly built and also technically unnecessarily located flood control project with no permits from the local government. So that's one of the new things we'd like to bring to most people's attention. And the other is that the Government Procurement Reform Act gives the DPWH the upper hand in terminating contracts because, number one, there is a provision for termination for unlawful acts. And the DPWH at this point can put pressure on contractors to not build substandard projects and not engage in bid rigging. But insofar as these two acts have been reportedly prevalent in the DPWH, then we find some basis to terminate the contracts there. But more importantly, the contracts have a provision for termination for convenience. So even if the DPWH just says that it's now impractical to proceed on these contracts, it can have a very low burden of proof to terminate these contracts and at most only pay the percent of the contract that has already been done, not any penalties for the lost profits of the contractor.
Ideally, it would be nice, no, to get the money back from all of these contracts, but also wouldn't that set us back with the government's infrastructure programs? And where do you propose we start? Do we start with the top contractors, or how do we conduct a fair review of all? Or is it just an across-the-board 25% that you're pitching here?
Yes, it's fair to say that we should start with the projects that are currently being investigated and have been pointed out to be substandard. So I find it somewhat ironic that there are so many investigations on DPWH projects now, and people haven't been calling for a not only suspension but also termination of some of these questionable contracts. The economic effect of canceling some of these contracts would be to the extent that it has been reported that at least flood control projects only have 35% of the contract price actually going into the project, and other projects are reported in the Senate hearings to have only 50% of the contract price actually going into the project. Instead of those payments being made to the contractors, they can, number one, be used by government for any other more efficient use, but second, quickly rebid with the projects at a lower price.
Oh, pero syempre ang hirap, hindi ba mahirap naman din 'yon? I mean, wouldn't you want to conduct individual reviews of these projects, and kasi baka kung magkamali ka din tapos may nilabas na rin yung contractor, kawawa naman kung baga parang nadamay lang siya at hindi naman siya kumbaga nagkaroon ng malaking patong dito. How do we apply this fairly?
Well, definitely the rate isn't the same across all projects because, as was reported in some of these Senate hearings, the horizontal projects have 35% of their contract price actually going into the project, and vertical projects have maybe 50% of their contract price actually going into the project, with the rest being either kickback or profit of the contractor. But at least those numbers give you a feeling that there is not a tight margin on these projects relative to their direct cost. The reports are that bid rigging is widespread and that these costs require the contractors to cut corners on their projects. So as unfortunate as it is to say, it's more of a question of what projects should not be canceled than what projects should be canceled. But of course, you should start with the ones that are, number one, most questioned already. And then it's just really a a question of why cancellation or repricing hasn't been raised in the first place for these projects. But secondly, I want to emphasize that the most important thing that Congress will do this week is we are scheduled to vote on the 2026 budget on Friday, and there has not been a repricing of DPWH projects from the initial version that was submitted to Congress in the middle of this year to today. So without needing to sacrifice anything on the actual projects, without even needing to go into unwinding 2025 contracts, the very straightforward thing to do is for us to reprice all the 2026 projects before we approve the budget.
We do know that a review would slow down approvals on and development of public infrastructure. What do you think could the effect be, and how do we manage the effect on also not just infrastructure but also the economy? It does play into public spending, and it is worth to note that back during the Pinoy administration, public spending slowed down because the former DPWH Secretary Sing Son wanted to clean up the mechanisms in the DPWH. Wouldn't a complete review and reassessment be very complex and time-consuming? I understand though your point na kung may pera dyan, no, ibalik natin yan sa kaban ng bayan kasi alam na natin yung katotohanan. But on the other hand, no, this will have impact on other sectors like the economy, like infrastructure, like also yung the development and possibly turning off quality developers or contractors.
First of all, again, I think it's more of a question of what projects of the DPWH should not be canceled. I don't think there are many people who can point to projects that are not overpriced and not substandardly built. But the 2026 projects are not yet under construction. So it would not come at great cost to the country to reprice those before they are even approved. And even for those that are already approved and under construction in 2025, for them to be canceled, repriced, and rebid would not take more than just a few months. So, of course, you go with those that are easiest to put off, but that even the best ones of them still cannot escape the allegation that they are overpriced, because the prices are quite consistent across the country because DPWH sets them in their central office based on the cost of materials, and the practice of having to find ways to cut corners on projects has been reported to be widespread and systemic in DPWH. So the best case is still that on a contract price, only, for example, 50% of that contract price actually goes into the economy. So you're going to save 100% of the contract price and only going to forgo 50%, let's say, of it in terms of what circulates into the economy. And the impact then is that you're going to reduce the wealth accumulated by the people benefiting from these contracts. And in exchange, the government will have savings that it can reuse for a more efficient use.
You've proposed redirecting 400 billion pesos to health and education. Where would you like to see those funds allocated?
Well, the 255 billion pesos flood control budget has been reallocated to those two already, the largest being 60 billion into PhilHealth. There's also another 30 plus billion into medical assistance and 22.5 billion into classrooms, 9 billion into the tertiary education subsidy, and there's also a proposal to have 12.3 billion into state universities and colleges. But the response to your point on not also reducing infrastructure spending is that these same funds can also go back into the projects in addition to funding health and education, because when you have savings, then you can do more things with the same budget. And the part of the intended health and education budget would also be the construction of health and infrastructure, education infrastructure, such as classrooms, health centers, and hospitals, which in my district at least are much badly needed. Actually, the inspiration for this proposal now is because all us district representatives are looking for ways to increase the budget of our respective districts at this point when Congress is finalizing the 2026 budget. And we're being told that there is not enough fiscal space, but because there is, I think now, a established fact that projects are overpriced, then it just seems obvious to me that we can fund all of these government priorities by finding savings in these existing projects.
Do you agree with the President's directive to realign flood control funds to DSWD? Kausap namin yung DSWD last week at sabi nila, ilalagay nga nila yan sa AIC, sa Sustainable Livelihood Program, where we ask, how do you ensure that these will not be used for political posturing and purposes? Sabi nila, that goes through a stringent process and subject to review. Pero do you agree with that, realigning flood control funds to the DSWD?
Yes, when I was talking about the health and education realignments in the 255 billion peso flood control budget, the DSWD is actually one of the other agencies that received some of that realignment, but is not more than maybe 12% of the total realignment. The DSWD is at least a less corrupt use of funds than a DPWH project because more than 50%, I would say, of those funds actually goes into its intended use. It's a much higher percent when you're talking about cash transfers. But I think easiest way to argue this is not to say DSWD or health or education over infrastructure. It's more infrastructure versus less infrastructure. Because as a policy matter moving forward, there's really no way to defend that we shouldn't lower the prices when they're established to be high. Because if it's good to have, for example, 3 solar streetlights, then it's even better to have 4, 5, or 6 solar streetlights if it is determined that solar streetlights are 30 to 50 to 100% overpriced.
The DPWH submitted their budget already or defended it before the Congress. Are you happy with the way it's been stripped off of all these extra costs? Tingin nyo, yun na ba yung natanggalan na yon ng mga patong-patong or pwede pa siyang bawasan talaga?
That's why I'm bringing this up because we haven't removed what you just referred to at all on the remaining projects. The price on the projects that were proposed that are not flood control are the same as they were before this scandal erupted. So if we want to prove that the 2026 budget is better than the 2025 budget, then we need to lower the prices. If we are not lowering the prices, then we are sanctioning all of the same practices that people are complaining about now in the 2025 budget. And in addition to that, the flood control budget was removed, but I will be sharing more about this and bringing it up more over the week before we vote on the budget. Congress actually added road projects and other projects to the DPWH budget that have yet to be scrutinized. So flood control is not the only sin here. Road maintenance, for example, asphalt overlays, reblocking, these practices that our citizens are very familiar with when they see supposedly finely built roads being blocked or asphalt overlaid are another source of overpricing contracts, and practices like that have not been clamped down on at all. In fact, they have been increased from the initial submission of the DPWH budget.
So the problem remains to be in the budget. Actually, may mga bringing up na rin, no? Bukod nga sa flood control, we should be looking at roads, classrooms, even health centers, and how money is spent on those projects. But thank you for bringing that up, and we hope to have more attention this way. Thank you for explaining to us this proposal. We have Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste this morning talking about the DPWH budget. Maraming salamat. In other news, Pope Leo XIV has expressed his closeness to Filipinos following the deadly earthquake that struck Cebu and nearby provinces. During his Sunday Angelus, the Pope assured prayers for the victims of the 6.9 magnitude quake. He urged the faithful to remain united in faith and seek the intercession of the Blessed Mother amid tragedy. Relief efforts continue with dioceses across the country sending aid and the Archdiocese of Cebu launching donation drives for affected communities.
Nella sera di martedì 30 settembre un forte sisma ha colpito la regione centrale delle Filippine, in particolare la provincia di Cebu e le province limitrofe. Esprimo la mia vicinanza al caro popolo filippino e in particolare prego per coloro che sono più duramente provati dalle conseguenze del terremoto.
Moving over to sports, Ateneo de Manila University defeated De La Salle University in both the men's and women's divisions on Sunday in UAAP Season 88. In the men's game, Ateneo held off a furious late rally by the Green Archers to win 81-74. Ateneo's once 31-point lead was trimmed to just 5 in the final minutes after being outscored 36-13 in the fourth quarter, but they held on for their first elimination round victory over De La Salle University since 2023. In the women's division, the Ateneo Blue Eagles dominated De La Salle 77-58. The Blue Eagles now share the lead with University of Santo Tomas, both holding 3-0 records in the 8-team field. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day and the week matter. My name is Gretchen Ho. We are One News, all sides, all the time.